Welcome back. In this episode, I'm talking to David Mclean. David tells me what it was like to grow up in the military and live in the Far East as a child, playing in both the jungles of Singapore and the streets of Hong Kong. David later joined the army, serving with the RAOC before leaving and living in Germany. Later then returned to the UK and having a long career within the NHS. If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie'sPod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking to David Mclean. David's going to go over what it was like growing up in the army, serving in the army, and anything else he wants to talk about. Hi, David. How are you doing?
Fine.
Right. So if you could just tell us where you grew up, why you joined the army, and anything else you really want to talk about.
Okay. Well, growing up's a bit difficult here. I was born on Park Road, which is just off Scotswood Road in Newcastle, right down in the west end of Newcastle. But I only actually lived there for a couple of months. There was my father was between national services and re-signing on. So he hadn't actually re-signed on the army just yet. And I think times were bad at the time, especially for my father and my mother, because he moved from Newcastle down to Manchester for work. And he ended up selling hot dogs at the street corner, which didn't go so well. So he decided to re-sign onto the army. And he joined the RAOC. And he was posted to a place called Schoin, which is just outside Celle in West Germany.
I thought I'd heard of it. I served in Horner.
Oh, yeah, I know Horner very well.
Yeah.
And it was posted to Schoin. Well, I don't have early memories from Schoin except from about the age of about 3 or 4 years old, in that it was a wild place to grow up as a child. It was completely in the middle of nowhere between Bergen-Belsen and Celle, and it was in the middle of the woods. My father was always at work, obviously, and me and a couple of lads, because there was always loads of kids around in them days, army kids. We had free run of the place, and it was literally woods and you know, looking for rabbits and going out and stuff like that. And we actually had servants then, who were actually German.
Wow.
I used to work for the British Army for peanuts, because it was just after the war and stuff like that, you know. And I used to have a lady called Irmgard, I believe, something like that. And she used to take me quite often out on the front of a bike picking up mushrooms and stuff like that. So it's quite a good insight into how the Germans live in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I went to school in Celle. And it was at Trenchard Barracks.
Yeah, I mean, that's still there, yeah.
Yeah, Trenchard Barracks in Celle. And I went to school there, to the infant school. And I don't remember very much of that because it's only the first year in school. But I do remember that it used to snow a lot.
Yeah.
And we used to have fights in the playground with snowball fights and stuff like that as kids. It's not like nowadays when everybody goes home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I came back, and I remember we lived there until I was about 5. And then we got posted from there all the way out to Singapore.
Wow.
When I was 5. So we left there and had to go back to England, I believe, and then we caught an old Britannia.
Yeah. I mean, I think people also forget that we were in Singapore after the war as well.
Oh,
I mean, we were there as the Army Service Corps type of thing.
That was a colony.
Yeah, but we were they wanted us in Singapore before transition. I mean, we were there till the mid-70s.
No.
I thought it was like 1974 that we actually left there.
I actually knew the fella, W2 Campbell, who was posted to the what they called the Gurkha Regiment.
Yeah.
Who actually pulled down a Union Jack in Singapore.
Wow.
The one that pulled it down to close the colony off. And that was in 1969, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was a little bit later than that, yeah.
There might have been British presence in Singapore, but not...
But the transition to...
Because the Australians came in. There was a lot of Australians in then. But Q Campbell, he was the one that pulled the Union Jack down.
Wow, yeah.
W2 Campbell. And I met him again later on. I'll come to that later on.
Okay.
Anyway, it's rather a small world, really. The Ordnance Corps, any regiments are quite a small world. But we went to Singapore and had to fly from Brize Norton and Old Britannia that went to, I think the first stopover was somewhere in the Middle East, and we went to Karachi, Bombay. It took ages to get to Singapore. It took a couple of days flying in Old Britannia.
Yeah.
You know, great experience for a kid, 5 years old. You know, it was great. And we landed in Singapore and had no quarter, so we went to a private hiring, which was a massive estate run by this Chinese family, and we had a little hut on the side. Well, hut. It was supposed to be a bungalow, but it was a hut on the side of this estate. And and I would go out and with my mother at the time, and we'd watch the people cut coconuts down from the tree and stuff like that, eat them actually on the ground. In front of the house and stuff like that, all the coconuts and what have you. And they used to have loads of monkeys. Right. This place had a big cage of monkeys, hundreds of monkeys in it. And one night there was a big commotion over there. And what had happened is I went over the next morning and they'd caught this python. It was after the monkeys in there to eat the monkeys, obviously. And this python, bear in mind I'm 5 or 6 years old, the python was rolled up in a cage and it was still bigger than me, higher than me. And it had a girth probably about this, massive python, massive thing it was. And but growing up there, I remember catching beasties and stuff like that, like centipedes and stuff like that. Years later, I found out they were poisonous and bite, but they were about 2 foot long, these centipedes.
Yeah, if you don't know, you're not scared.
Yeah, God. And we moved from there and we got a house on the Bukit Road, which is going along from Singapore into Malaya on the causeway.
Yeah.
On the Bukit Road, there was like this row of houses, and there were all quarters in there. There was probably about 15 houses in a row, and they were all quarters with all the kids in there. There were hundreds of kids there. There's always hundreds of kids in the army in the beginning. It changed as time went on, but at that time there was loads of kids. And people used to keep all sorts of strange pets then. And I remember I was 6 years old, and I actually had a fight with a monkey. The guy next door had this monkey that used to attack the kids, used to chain it up onto the front of the thing. Nobody cared about animal welfare and stuff like that in them days. He had this monkey chained, and he used to attack the kids as they're going past. And it attacked me. So me and this monkey had a stand-up fight. And it was nearly as big as me, this monkey. And to be honest, if it hadn't been chained up, the monkey would have won. Which is quite interesting, I suppose. And when we went out of the house, we went to the back of the fields, and the place was covered in snakes and spiders and lovely things for kids.
Yeah. I
loved it. I had a great time there. And my parents then introduced me to board games like Go and Monopoly and stuff like that. All the things that the army used to do, because there was no telly.
No.
I didn't have a telly. I actually didn't have a TV until I was 13.
Imagine the kids nowadays.
Yeah, never had a telly.
Imagine just anybody nowadays without a telly.
Anyway, that was on the Bukit Road, but they were temporary accommodation, so you weren't there very long. And we moved out to a bungalow. As we got to the bungalow, we had then 2 servants. And they were paid mostly by the army.
Yeah.
You had to pay a little bit towards them, but mostly by the army. And one was called an armour. And we looked after kids and did the household cooking and stuff like that, because white women are not supposed to work in hot climates and stuff like that in them days. That's the way it was.
It's a different world.
Yep. But the white women were supposed to sit there, look pretty, and eat cakes or whatever. And we used to share a gardener between 3 houses. A gardener would cut the grass. You couldn't have white men mowing lawns and stuff like that. And you had that the bungalows used to all have what's it called? They were all caged in with what's it called? Bars on the window and stuff like that, because people used to break in and steal stuff. In fact, a neighbour of ours got stuff stolen. I remember my father talking about it, saying that a thief had come along with a fishing rod and stuck it through there and fished things out with a fishing rod, which is fairly clever, really.
Well, if they want to get something, they're always going to get it in the end.
Yeah,
Aren't they?
well, I got there. I was about six and a half, something like that, and to be honest, soldiers were pretty wealthy then. My father was only a lance corporal then,
Yeah.
but they were pretty wealthy. They could do and be whatever they want, And we travelled loads inside Malaya and stuff like that, and the armor wouldn't come with us, but we would go out and went fishing up country and stuff like that. It was pretty good. I went to Cameron Highlands once for a week on what the army paid for. Where the whole family went up there, flew up there, and Cameron Highlands is in Thailand, Bangkok.
Yeah.
Went to Bangkok and then up into the hills. And I remember as a kid seeing signs there, beware of the tiger and stuff like. Keep your kids close. Because they would eat you. Because the tigers used to come down the village and steal the dogs and cats and stuff like that. But they would take a kid as well if they're lying around.
It's just food to a tiger.
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. And it was great time. But one of the things was that white people used to treat the indigenous population really bad. Anybody that says that colonialism was a good thing has got to take some of these things into account. I remember my mother taking me to a hospital once, and we walked into the hospital with the pillars and the big white front of the building and stuff like that, massive. We walked into the front and people opened doors with their turbans on and stuff like that. We're still talking the very early 60s then.
Right.
And with the turbans on and stuff like that, because there's lots and lots of Indian personnel there, Sikhs and what have you, were working there. And then there was a big queue down the side of the hospital. And I remember saying to my mother, well, what are them doing over there? They're coming to get permission to work for the army, and they were a rabble.
Yeah.
And they were herded there on the side to get the stamp into their book so they can go and work for the army. And they weren't treated like us. We went into the front and they went into the back. No queue for the white people.
Yeah.
And or the British people.
Yeah,
some of them were black.
Again, it was a different time.
Yes, absolutely. And just goes to show how people used to treat somebody. My mother used to go through armours dead quickly. And the thing is, if you got the sack in Singapore and you got the sack from the British government, you didn't work.
Yeah, and there's no
other work.
Like
there's no work there.
Yeah.
And there's no factories like there is nowadays. You couldn't go and work in a shop or anything like that. If you got sacked by the British Army, that was it. You and your kids starve.
That's terrible, isn't
it? Yeah, well, anybody that says that colonialism was a great thing, no, it wasn't. It was a terrible thing. Anyway, but we had an armour once. I've racked my brains over the years to try and remember her name, but she was a lovely lady. And she'd been married to a resistance fighter during the war, a Chinese guy, it was Chinese armour, and he died in the war fighting the Japanese.
All right.
And he died, and she had 2 kids, and she was working as an armour. But she used to get 1 day off a fortnight. But she used to take me around with her, this armour, and she used to say to me, David, don't tell your mother.
Don't tell your mother.
Because her 2 kids, were living with the grandmother. So she used to go and visit them during the week, every now and again. But, if I'd have said anything, she got the sack. And to this day, my mother didn't know I did that. My mother's long dead now, but she didn't know. I never told her. And we used to go out and visit her kids, and I used to play with the Chinese kids up in the kampongs, because there were just little huts on the side of the mountain. Yeah. And I used to play with the kids and stuff like that, and it was pretty good, to be honest. They fed me, including clothes, but they treated me very nice. The indigenous slaves, as you'd call them nowadays, because they were.
I suppose so, yeah.
They were. Yeah. The army used to live under the stairs in an area that was probably 7 foot long,
right,
sloping roof with a toilet in there. That's where she lived. She didn't use the toilets where we lived.
Yeah.
She had a hole in the ground where they stooped down and have a shit.
Jesus.
That's how the armour lived for 13 days at a time. And people nowadays talk about that as a glorious time.
Yeah, because they were on the upper side of it.
Because the white people was glorious.
Yeah. I know people from like Africa, Rhodesia, as it was called, and how they spoke about the way they were, and it was very similar, but they didn't see the other side of it. Or they didn't. They knew it was happening, but they didn't care really. It was just the way it was. That's how it was expected. It went as what we would say we're enlightened now. I wouldn't say enlightened, but
We're better.
we're better than we were. Yeah.
Better.
Well,
yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah.
Not everyone.
But you mustn't forget where we come from. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like then. But Singapore, for a lad of that age, was wonderful.
I can imagine.
We used to have a tree in the back garden, for example. That's where I learned what a kiwi is.
Yeah.
Because I used to, not a kiwi, what they call? The lychee.
Oh, lychee, yeah.
Lychee. It looks like a conker when it's on the tree. And I used to watch the monkeys eating them. So as a little kid, I climbed up there and pulled these lychees off, and I used to eat them because the monkey used to do it, and I used to sit on the tree and look downstairs and watch the armour chopping the head off a chicken and stuff like that. A completely different world. That's
you look as though you miss it.
Well, as a child, I had a great time.
Yeah.
I've got to say the one thing that spoiled it at the time was actually my parents were not very good parents.
Right.
But that's another story. And there's a lot of parties, a lot of drink, a lot of army type stuff.
Yeah.
And I got to meet people like Edward Woodward. He babysat for me. Edward Woodward. He was on national service in Singapore.
Right. Oh, yeah. Bloody hell.
And he was my babysitter for 1 or 2 nights.
Wow.
But it was great. As a child, it was great. I went to Changi.
Right.
I watched where the prisoners were kept and stuff like that. Seen the old Changi building, so the other ranks were. You didn't see the officers like King Rat. Didn't see them because that was all leveled out then.
Yeah.
We actually went swimming on the beach there, and we rented an old pillbox for a weekend. I presume they rented it, or they just moved it out. Anyway, it was just a round pillboxes on the beach, and probably built by the British rather than the Japanese, because we were there longer. So and we slept in a pillbox and went swimming off Changi Beach and stuff like that, And
wow,
that you can't equate it to a life growing up in, say, Newcastle or wherever.
No,
it's a completely different world. And we ate well, although my parents were not good travellers.
Right.
And they didn't use the indigenous food very well. They tried to eat like Brits. So you'd have Yorkshire puddings and stuff like that, and
that's typical,
mince and taties and stuff. And whereas you should be eating lychees and coconuts and whatever. They didn't do that. They were Brits.
I think I'd probably be the same, to be honest. Try and keep your food English.
Anyway, that was Singapore out of the way, really, and an experience that I'm glad I made.
Yeah, it's. I'm sat here and I'm thinking I'm jealous.
I'm glad I made it. It was something exceptional.
So where did you move after Singapore then?
Singapore went back to England.
Yeah, very different then.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to think now. No, we didn't.
Oh.
No, it's not true. We went to a place in Corsham, which is a transit camp for families moving between postings.
Right.
And we were in Corsham for a little while. We went from there to Bielefeld.
Right.
In Germany.
You forget that. Well, I didn't say I forget. I didn't realise that they had transit camps for families.
Oh yeah, Corsham was a big
I
transit
didn't know
camp.
That, no.
Oh yeah, it's a strange place as well.
I can imagine.
Very strange.
It's just like temporary accommodation.
It's very, very interesting later on because I went again when I was a bit older.
Right.
But it was quite interesting then, and the men folk quite often weren't there, so there's wives and kids only.
Yeah. Quite
often. Now and again, you had a few soldiers, but generally they weren't there. Just the wives and kids. That's why it was much more interesting when I was older.
Fair enough.
Anyway, we went from there, and I'm trying to put the timeline in place now, and went to stay at my grandmother's for a short while up in Newcastle, and we went from there. We got the boat train over and met my father, who drove us then to Germany.
Yeah.
and we stayed in Bielefeld in a hotel for a while, and we got a place, a hiring, which is also strange. Once again, hirings are really odd things in them days.
Yeah.
But we lived with this German family, and there was two British families, and there's a big German household
Yeah.
with the houses on the side. They still got it nowadays, so the Germans still run that system now.
Right. Wow. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
You
the
know,
Germans.
obviously, I mean, the
I
first
lived in
time.
Germany for 12 years as well.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I went to Germany was 1986, and I was single. So I don't think there was anything like that then. You know, there was
Oh, there
quarters
was.
everywhere. Oh, was it?
Oh, there was. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Anyway, we didn't have a quarter, so we went to a private hiring, and we lived with this lady called Ursula or something like that. Hildegard, something like that. Anyway, but she run it.
Yeah.
Her husband was a carpenter and had a big had a firm in Bielefeld. Had a son called Wolfgang, who was older than me, he was about 16. And in between times, I had a brother and sister as well were born.
Yeah.
They were both born in Germany.
Right.
The first time in Celle. Went back to Germany, and it was really outside the town, and it was a farming place with big rolling fields out the back and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
once again, school went to Bielefeld to school, and the school bus would come around and pick you up in the morning and drop you off at after school, and it was very much town like that. So I didn't have that much experience there for a few months, and then went to a place called Erlinghausen up in the mountains.
Yeah. I'm not sure where I know where that is now.
It's in between Hildesheim and going down to where you were talking about before the
Goslar.
Gottslow, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's up in the mountains there anyway.
Yeah.
But what's near it? Hamel's quite close.
Right. Okay.
Hamel's quite close. Hereford's quite close.
Yeah.
And Bielefeld.
So the Harz Mountains, is that it?
No, that's further
It's
east.
further. Yeah.
That's further
east.
east.
Yeah.
Not quite that far. And we went to Erlinghausen, and once again, as a British soldier's kid, it was wonderful. The place was completely wild. You know, it was up in the mountains. There was sledging and skiing and stuff like that, and animals. The place was teeming with animals,
Yeah.
with deer and boar and you know everything you could think of for that kind of climate. You know, they all lived there, tons of them, up in the mountains. In fact, as kids, we used to make bow and arrows and go hunt them. Never caught one. But you
what would you have done?
Like tribes of us would go out and hunt these deer and whatever, you know. And there was lizards up there and stuff like that. Things that you don't get here.
No.
You know, we hardly get a grasshopper here, do we? Because farmers are poisonable here. But that's the life. And we used to go to school into Bielefeld from Erlinghausen down to Bielefeld. And quite an interesting thing about that, there was lots of soldiers then that were married to Germans.
Yeah.
You know, and you could tell the difference between the kids that were English kids and the kids that the mothers were German.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was serving.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, big difference.
It's that we would go to school, basically, you know, with January up in these mountains where it's minus 25 degrees and stuff like that. You know, and you'd be wearing clothes that you go into Liverpool slumming.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have coats, you didn't have gloves, didn't have hats, didn't have proper boots or anything like that. And the German kids would have scarves and, you know, mufflers on and big boots and fluffy jackets and stuff. English kids didn't have, British kids didn't have that. You know, it's bloody freezing. I remember waiting for the buses there, you know, absolutely freezing to death. You know, and these German kids were up to the nines.
Yeah.
You know, but never mind. The kids were like feral monsters. They were. You know, that's where you learned how to play things like British Bulldog and stuff like that. There was thousands of kids. It's hard to believe nowadays, but most of the squaddy families had, you know, 2, 3, 4 kids.
Yeah.
You know, of all ages. You know, and they used to just, because no TV, no internet.
No.
So these kids used to just run wild, and there was hundreds of them. And you can imagine, you used to look over the balcony because I used to live in a high flight one, I lived on
Yeah.
the seventh floor then. You look over the balcony and you could see the playground, a big area. Well, it wasn't a playground, it was an area that the kids took over. And
Yeah.
there'd be pitched battles between the kids on this field. And you'd see kids getting hurt and stuff like that, and nobody bothered. you know. And I remember a friend of mine, Ian, who was actually my best friend. He was my best friend when I was in Shoin as a young kid, and I met him again in Erlinghausen,
Yeah.
and we were both around about 10 years old then, 8 years old, 10, something like that. We met again, and he broke his leg when we were fighting out and stuff like that. So, but never seen him again after that. Actually, I got posted away. But that was the life as a child of a 10-year-old child. That's when I seen England beat West Germany in the World Cup. First time I seen a TV, and it was upstairs. The guy upstairs had a TV and invited everybody who wanted to come upstairs. And I was 10 or 11 years old, and I wasn't really that interested. I just looked at. I'd seen England were playing, and I knew they won.
Yeah.
So but that's when I seen a TV for the first time. Not our TV, I must stress.
Yeah.
But somebody had a TV. But once again, it was the same sort of thing, the parents used to party a lot,
Yeah.
and the kids were left to their own devices. Very
Yeah.
much so.
I don't think much has changed.
in army circles. But the thing is about the army is there was a written law that parents couldn't overstep a mark because it would affect them at work.
Yeah.
Whether your SAFA was around and all this kind of thing, they were there. They were very visible people like SAFA.
Yeah.
And if anybody was getting, they didn't get mistreated by their parents, because they'd be up for the high jump if that happened. There'd be real problems.
Yeah, I don't think they're as strict as that now.
Oh, they were then.
Yeah, they're not. They are now.
Because I actually remember a block got barracked in once.
Right.
Families, and they had a block inspection. And all the wives were cleaning outside because it was filthy, and they had to come and they got inspected by the RSM.
I don't think they get away with that nowadays.
I'm not so sure they will. They might do still,
Yeah.
but that was late. That wasn't there. That wasn't in Erlinghausen. That was Erlinghausen. That was somewhere else later on.
Yeah.
That's actually when I was in the army.
Wow.
So that was later on. That was much later on. But it could happen.
Yeah.
Because he used to have inspections, like block inspections and stuff like that.
No, I mean, even when I lived in Germany the last time, we used to, we never had a block inspection, but they did keep an eye on it. And we had, we lived in a 3-story block of flats.
Yeah.
And like, our job for our flat, our family, ours was the staircases. Somebody else looked after the basement where the laundry was.
Or where the bins are.
Like that, yeah. We all had our own little areas that we had to keep clean and tidy.
Outside areas, yeah.
Yeah, outside
Imagine
areas.
doing that nowadays in the West End of Newcastle. Give it a shot.
Yeah, you'd have a lot of pick-up, I think, yeah.
But that used to be the life then, the British Army, love them or hate them, they ran the schools very well.
Yeah.
The kids were well educated compared to civic kids.
Yeah.
A good example of that was when I had a short spell in England, and my whole time in army schools, which I spent most of my time up to then in army schools, I was always a C grade pupil, average and everything, not very bright, not very dumb.
Yeah.
And I went to a school in Portsmouth, which was the roughest school I've ever seen in my life. But I went there, and all of a sudden they did a little test when you get in, and I was an A straight A.
Wow.
Went into the A classes, and I'd never been anywhere near it in my life. Must admit, in Portsmouth, all these kids were Matlow's kids. Once again, it was a private iron.
Yeah.
Who were in there. That was after Germany. But let's go back to Germany first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the point of it, what I'm trying to make then, is my parents were the same as what they were in Singapore, in that they lived for themselves, very much so.
Yeah.
My mother was terrible to the people who used to work. She used to sack them all the time. I remember I told you in Singapore, she used to do them, and knew what it would do to them, and
didn't care.
And kind of revelled in it.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Enjoyed the power.
It enjoyed the power, yeah.
Yeah, and in Germany it was very much the same, because the German population was still suffering from the fallout from the war.
Yeah.
And like I said, in Shoin, we still had German servants and stuff like that, very much like armors and stuff like that in
Yeah.
Singapore. Didn't have it the second time, obviously, because it's further on. And we eventually left from there. Oh, I've got to tell you this story. Um, I got a bike one Christmas, and such a surprise for me to get a Christmas present of any value
Right.
until I found out later my father won it in a card game.
Okay.
So they didn't actually buy it, and he won it from Crawley Morley, which is another guy that used to look after us. When single soldiers used to quite often go to the pads and stay overnight and have Sunday dinner, etc., etc. A bit of a change from living in the barracks. And the army used to do loads of things. Like I remember Christmas parties when Santa used to come round, and they used to have a collection, and kids used to get things and stuff like that from the
Yeah.
army. And what was the barracks? The big one I remember when Santa came. That was in Bielefeld. That was, can't remember. Yeah, it became an RCT barracks afterwards, anyway.
Right.
If that helps. But anyway, we left there, and then we went back to England. We went back to England, which was a bit of a shock.
I can imagine after living, because it's a completely different environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, living in Singapore and then coming back to Germany and having the fun there.
Well, Germany, Singapore, Germany.
Yeah. And then you're in the UK. And
Yeah.
it's,
Completely different.
yeah.
And we were extremely poor in England.
Yeah.
Extremely poor. We weren't wealthy when we were in Singapore, and with Singapore quite wealthy, but in Germany weren't wealthy, but you were reasonably well
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about the pennies too much, so we got reasonably well fed and stuff. Reasonably. My mother still thought that a tin of soup was enough for 3 kids for dinner. It wasn't a very nice woman, my mother.
Right. Okay.
But never mind. We come back to England, and we finally got posted to Tidworth, and we stayed in Hiren in Portsmouth, just at Havant, just outside.
Yeah, I
Portsmouth,
know.
just outside. And I went to school there, and that's where I went to the roughest school I've ever seen in my life. You know, where people, my introduction was I went to the woodwork class, and dodging lumps of wood were getting chucked around the room, mostly at the teacher. You know, and it was really, really a rough school. And I don't know if you know anything about rough schools or schools in general, but when you come back to England, if you're the new boy,
Yeah.
everybody had a go at you.
Yeah, of course they did.
And
Fresh meat. Yeah.
compared to using the army school, which is changeable.
Yeah.
People are coming and going all the time. You get used to it. At civvy school, you're not. Them people lived next door to each other for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of them was Julius Caesar. And they all know each other. They all know each other's business. And you walk in there, and then I became an A student as well. Jesus Christ! You know, I spent the 3-4 months that I was in Havant or whatever it is, fighting everybody that would walk. You know, I used to go into the dinner queue and stuff like that, and I'd end up with a fight before I got to the taties.
Yeah.
You know, every day, every single day of my school, I fought at least one person.
Did they ever go at you because of your accent or lack of accent as well? Because I know when I moved back from Germany, we moved to the northeast. My kids went to school in Prudhoe, and everyone was like, "You was dead posh," because they didn't have an accent.
Well, do I have an accent?
I mean, you do now, but very slight, really, compared to. I mean, you live in Blythe.
No, I've lived here. I lived here now for back in England. How long have I been in
Put it this
England?
way,
30 years.
I wouldn't say you've got a Northumbrian
No,
accent.
not at all. And so I didn't have much of an accent, no, because the army accent's a poly accent.
Yeah.
Because your friends are Scottish, your friends are Welsh,
Yeah.
friends are whatever, English as well, some of them. But anyway, it wasn't because of the accent, because most of the kids that went to that school were Matlow's kids,
Yeah.
and most Matlow's kids, if anybody knows about ships in general, whether it's merchant or Royal Navy, they're away for a long time.
Yeah.
So they're brought up by mothers, and most women who marry servicemen of any shape, colour, or creed are not usually the best quality.
I know what you
A
mean.
lot of them have questionable morals.
Yeah, Navy wives. Yeah. I lived in Gosport for a while.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know all about that then, don't you?
Well, we lived in. I was in 47 at Thorney Island,
Uh-huh.
so that's why how I know Havant. You know, it was the next. It's the next island, isn't it? We lived in Gosport. It was our first quarter. In the and most of the people lived on the camp. There was a good group of us who lived over in Gosport as well. Yeah, it's a strange time. Let's say. If he's went out on the piss downtown, and I mean the lads, the single lads on camp, they used to go into Southsea in Portsmouth, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. There was a nightclub there called Joanna's, and it was a proper sticky mat place, and they wouldn't let Matlows in. So the lads would go there and go, right, you're not coming in. Don't allow Navy in. And they'd pull their ID cards out. Oh, you're in the army. Get straight in, lads. And they would they loved it. They absolutely loved it there for obvious reasons as well. I mean, I was married at the time, so we didn't get to see any side of that side. But yeah, to say that there's some questionable wives in the military, there is in Civvy Street as well.
But it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
There's not many women generally that go to, and that doesn't matter if it's Singapore or whatever, in them days anyway, it didn't matter. The women that went to like Naffy Doos and stuff like that.
Yeah. They were after getting a squaddy.
Yeah.
Stability.
Yeah. And
That's what they're after.
I'll come to a few stories about that later on from serving times, because I didn't know much about this at that time. I was just a kid.
Yeah.
But the kids, you can imagine, the kids from Matlow's kids that were going to the school that I was going to were as rough as arseholes.
Yeah.
So I spent 3 or 4 months just fighting everybody, basically. And it's a good learning curve.
Yeah. Gets you fighting fit, yeah.
But anyway, and we moved to Winchester.
All right, okay.
Winchester.
Yeah.
Posh part of the town.
As I said,
Lovely school.
Yeah.
Lovely school I went to, and it was Romsey Road School, but I met Lord Mountbatten.
Wow.
Because it was Mountbatten of Alamein.
Right.
It was renamed the school while I was there. And I didn't meet him face to face. I seen him in a distance. And that's why it was called. It was real name of it was Romsey Road School, boys' school, all boys' school, and he came along and renamed it. Good school, and I learned my love of history and geography from that school actually.
Yeah.
Because we had a teacher there that was absolutely excellent. He really went into things. History is a very, very dry subject.
Yes, it is.
Because usually they just talk about dates and times and stuff like that. But he actually spoke about how people lived then. Real people.
And I bet you know his name. I bet you remember.
No,
his name.
don't.
Oh,
Can't remember.
Because it is amazing that, again, sorry to interrupt you, but it's amazing when I've spoken to people and they have talked about school and then they always remember that good teacher that got them interested in a subject or whatever they got interested in, be it history, geography, physics, music. I'm the same. I remember my physics teachers and stuff like that. So I'm a physics when I was at school.
So yes, I can see where you're coming from. Yeah. But one of the problems with that is that I was now 11 years old, and I think that was his 7th school.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that side of the military life.
6th or 7th school, something like that.
Yeah, you haven't got stability. Yeah.
No, it isn't there. They come and go. But he did install, because what this guy brought, he'd taught in Kenya, for example, and he brought loads of stuff back from Kenya, and he would show slides and animals and the Masai Mara and stuff like that, and he would talk about the tribes that lived there, and when he talked about what they grew indigenously, he would actually show you the things, which was bringing a whole new aspect to learning. It wasn't just book learning. So again, giving my love of history and geography, I could still see the guy, big fat guy with a baldy head, and he used to chuck rubbers at you and stuff like that. It was right, evil bastard, but a good teacher.
Yeah.
And learned to play rugby, cricket, stuff like that. Boys' school, it was great.
So how long were you there for?
about a year.
That it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, wow. So you haven't got settled anywhere?
No.
No.
So we were about 3 or 4 months in Portsmouth, moved up there with about a year, maybe a little longer, about a year in
Yeah.
Winchester. Lovely house and stuff like that, and a little street, going to school, catch the bus to school. It's good. And we got posted to Hong Kong.
Yeah, we spoke about this before we started. Yeah. That's one place I always wanted to go.
Went
I've
to
never
Hong
got a
Kong.
chance.
And I was becoming more aware then.
Yeah.
I was 11 years old, 12 years old, just joined the senior school. That was my first school in Romsey Road.
Right.
Um,
So you're going back to Hong Kong where you're going to be having servants again and stuff like that?
no,
No?
completely different world. We're talking a difference of maybe 5 years altogether.
Right.
And went from Singapore when you had servants and shared the stuff like that. Went to Hong Kong, you didn't unless you paid for it yourself.
Right. Okay.
There was no army subsidy to it. Whereas before you used to pay about 10%, the rest was the army paid for it.
Yeah.
Now, no, because we didn't have that much money anymore. The Brits had no money.
Right.
Different world.
Yeah.
Different world. Went to Hong Kong, but now I'm more aware. I'm
Yeah.
more aware of my environment, of what I'm doing. I'm introduced to music and people, and it was the late 60s, 67, 67, 68 we got there. So, the
That's when I was born.
flower power was coming into then and that sort of stuff, one of flower shirts. Hong Kong was brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant at that age.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I went to St. George's School in Hong Kong, which was okay. Um, Very good school because it was an army school. They're very good, small classes, good teachers. Mrs. Cunningham was my English teacher. There you go. I was there for 3 years. I remember somebody. Mr. Brown was my maths teacher. He absolutely hated me.
We always remember them ones as well. Yeah.
Cunningham was a good teacher. I can't remember. No, Mr. Nuttall, because I knew his daughter rather well. He was the art teacher.
Right.
Anyway, but in Hong Kong, like I said, it was a completely different world. And I was left very much to my own devices there in Hong Kong. We would get up, there'd be a group of us, a group of lads get together and lasses, and we'd go to somewhere like Big Wave Bay and stuff like that. And we'd leave in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, get together, and off we would go. Bus down to the town over on the ferry, Star Ferry, over to Hong Kong Island, and over to go through Hong Kong Island to Big Wave Bay, and we'd go swimming there and stuff like that. It was great, really good. And but actually we swam so well in them days. Well, I did, and so did most of the other ones. That when we used to go, there was a diving point on Big Wave Bay onto the left, and you used to walk onto the rocks, but it was so hot that we quite often used to swim round.
Yeah.
But you'd be swimming around a mile out and then turning into the bay where you could dive. So you're really out to sea into the South China Sea in the background. So it's a long way.
It is.
And Big Wave Bay is,
It's got big waves.
yeah, it's right out to the China. Funny thing about Chinese don't swim, or not very well. Because we used to go over this bus over the back of the mountain, and used to look down. There used to be a beach called Sheko,
Right.
which was sheltered, flat as a pancake, and you see thousands upon thousands of Chinese there. They're like sardines, and it's chock-a-block. And you go over the top to Big Wave Bay, where the waves are crashing in. It's empty. All you got there was Brits and Americans sometimes. They didn't go swimming there because you had to swim,
Yeah.
or you died.
Right. Fair enough.
There's no beach.
So they were being sensible, really.
The Chinese, yeah, but there were millions of them. Anyway, and that was the kind of thing you would get up to. We had discos and youth clubs and everything run by the army. Army very good at that.
Yeah.
And transport to the discos and to the youth clubs and stuff like that. That was excellent. And very much, I remember my father decided to go camping. What a div. Up into the new territories camping. The place was swarming with beasties.
Yeah.
I mean, swarming. and literally eaten alive by mosquitoes and stuff like that. My brother went for a shit and a snake chased him. But anyway, we were sat there. We got the tent out of the army, went out there. And I remember going with my brother, Michael, and how old was I? 14. He'd have been 11, 10, 10, 11. And we're on the lilo. We only had one lilo between us, obviously. Shared it. We're going out, and one mask. We only had one mask as well.
Yeah.
Poor kids. And I remember leaning over to her. I said, Mickey, I was leaning over the side with this thing, and I could see the water was only about that deep down to the rocks, and I was looking over the side. Mickey, there's a big octopus down there. It was about that big. So, here, have a look. I gave him the glasses, and he looked over the side, and as he looked over, I pushed him in and batted away. And he's never forgot that to this day. He still hates me for it. Terrified, anyway. And we did things like, we used to go to the discos and stuff when you were only 18 when you were supposed to go there, weren't allowed there. But we used to go there when you were 14 and 15-year-old. And get stopped by the police and stuff like that, searched for drugs. Never had any.
No.
Yeah, there's a couple of kids got sent back to Britain, but because they were using drugs, he said, send them back. He said, snap them up, up we go, repatriated.
Yeah.
Army wouldn't do that, wouldn't settle for that.
No.
And one kid used to be a shoplifter. He used to shoplift for on demand. You tell him what you want to do, you can go and get it for you. It's half price. Kids are soldiers, and we were wild kids. I mean, really,
Sounds it.
You can't imagine what it was like here. We had running fights for the Chinese kids.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Literally all the time. As teenagers. I remember once going down there. Chris Atkinson, a friend of mine, he got stabbed down there, superficially, not a major stab. But we were playing playing basketball with this group of Chinese kids down there. Was 3 of us or something,
Yeah.
And playing away, quite good. And all of a sudden there was hundreds of them, and you actually had to fight your way out of it.
So there was lots of animosity between. No.
There was quite a bit of animosity between the Chinese and the British kids. I don't know if it was about the adults as well, but certainly the British kids. And we were thugs, to be honest. And we used to fight amongst each other, and obviously sometimes we used to fight amongst the Chinese as well. The first place I lived at was called a place called Boundary Street. That was our first quarter. Was in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Boundary Street, and the place was absolutely teeming with cockroaches. And I don't mean cockroaches like we know them. These Johnnies were about this big.
Yeah.
And they fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
People don't realise that Asian cockroaches fly.
Yeah, they're not pretty.
No, they're ugly beasts. Anyway, and I remember mother and father having a pitched battle against the cockroaches, and eventually got rid of them there. And it was also my introduction to music. Was in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And it was a funny story, this actually. I'm listening to I had this little transitor sister. It's probably got it second hand from a car boot or something like that. I used to listen to music, and I remember thinking to myself, don't forget, I'm only 12 years old here.
Yeah.
Thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, Hong Kong's got a lot of really good quality singers and bands and stuff like that here. It's quite impressive, really. Not realising they were actually British and American.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought they would come from Hong Kong, which later on, I didn't admit it to anybody.
You just have.
But but at the time, I would never have said to anybody, Hong Kong's great with all these musicians, because I always realised that they weren't just from Hong Kong. Anyway, introduction to music, and it was a time of love and peace on earth, on earth, and it was even before Boundary Street was even before what's that festival in America, the big one? Woodstock, yeah. Because that was 68 or 69. Yeah, it was a year or so before that, but it was there,
Yeah.
And Was quite good. Stephen Waffen was a good friend of mine, and we had run battles with the Chinese then, because the boundary street was literally a walled enclosure
Yeah.
of high-rise flats just next to Stinky Market, which was on the way to Kai Tak, which was
Right.
the airport then.
Yeah.
And we weren't a mile away from the airport, and the planes used to go skim off the top of the high rise, and you could hit them with a pellet gun if you wanted to.
I imagine that being quite scary.
Well, you get used to it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think any of the planes ever crashed. Not often.
Well,
Not often, anyway. But, and we lived in Boundary Street, and Stinky Market was just down the road, and you had what's called the Walled City was in there, which was out of bounds.
Yeah.
So
I've heard about the Walled City.
Walled City was out of bounds to Europeans.
It's a strange place.
But not out of bounds to the kids. Because we used to frequent it all the time.
Yeah.
And the things that we see, I remember one of the first things I seen, I didn't realise the Chinese were did this at the time, just coming from England. They had this great big cage, massive cage, and it's full of locusts. And people were coming along, and they were like the chip tubes that we get here with chips in sometimes.
Yeah.
And they used to get them and just lift the lid off and scoop some locusts, put them in the top. I'm saying, what the hell are buying locusts? Bloody millions of locusts here and stuff like that flying around. Why would you buy them? And later on, I realised they were to eat.
Yeah. Did you ever have any?
I didn't have any, no. Well, actually, I don't know. I'll come to that a bit later on. So we used to watch the monkeys being tied up, not killed, but tied up, and the chickens and pigs were killed in the streets and slaughtered in the streets as well. So it was a common sight. There was nothing unusual about that. And that was called Stinky Market there, next to Wall C. But I can't emphasize it enough. As a kid, it was wonderful.
Yeah, exciting.
Absolutely wonderful. We did what we wanted.
Yeah.
We were lords of the manor kind of thing, Not that we had loads of money, because we didn't, but there were swimming pools to go to, and you could just... The cost of a bus ride was 10 cents. There was $17 to the pound.
Wow. So you can't... I mean, you
How
say
much
you
was
weren't well
that?
off, but you were well off compared to the locals.
Yes, yeah. If you had $5, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But in reality, that was 30 pence.
Yeah. But you could get a lot for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, $5 was a load of money. My pocket money was $5 a week. That's all I got a week.
So you lived like a lord.
Yeah, well, you could afford things like Coca-Cola. You could afford go on buses. I had a friend called Joel. You can imagine we're 13 years old at the time, 14 maybe. And Joel was a big, tall kid. 6'2".
Bloody hell.
Big, tall kid, 14 years old. And
They just stood out from the crowd over there then.
a little bit. Yeah. I'll go tell you a story about that as well. But that's the kind of things we got it to no end and no good. Out there, there was a youth club up at Gun Hill where we used to go to, and I remember one night we got there, and do you know what May beetles are? Didn't you?
Sorry?
You know what a May beetle is, don't you?
Yeah.
Big beetle. But they come across every now and again in Hong Kong, but they come across in swarms.
Yeah.
And these things are this big.
Yeah.
And there's thousands upon thousands of them.
And they hurt you when they fly.
Oh, yeah, don't they ever?
Yeah.
And because they can't fly very well. They can't dodge you. They just fly straight. Anyway, that's the kind of things used to happen, And I remember getting chased by a chow dog and, landing on a snake and the thing. I remember we took a landing craft out. A friend of mine took a landing. His father was... he was in the RCT, had landing craft, so we went out, and we used to go diving off the reefs and stuff like that. And I remember chasing sea snakes, which I thought were eels, and they weren't eels. It was one of David Attenborough's films. I realized, I know them snakes, and they're highly poisonous.
Yeah, like one of the most poisonous snakes.
Yeah, I used to chase
most venomous snakes in the
I
world.
never caught one. I know it was probably just as well. Never caught them. And oh, one of the things we used to get up to that was just unbelievable. That you just couldn't do it now.
No.
English kids didn't do it. We did it.
Yeah.
We did. The stuff we did out there, and I'm trying to think of some other things. But no, I remember getting lifted in Wan Chai, which is a bit of a bit of a naughty area of Hong Kong, and we got lifted there by the police, and being somewhere we shouldn't be, but we were, and you know, and the kids out there became a different breed,
Yeah.
much more grown up than the other ones. And the regiment that was there was the Welsh Fusiliers.
Right.
They were up in the top of Gun Hill, the barracks up there, Gun Hill, and they still had slaves, not slaves,
Servants.
yeah, tea wallers and
Yeah.
bunga wallers and jar wallers and boot wallers.
Right.
You know, and everybody knew what they did. And they used to come up and look after the single blokes up there. Used to get the kit ironed and pressed for them and stuff like that up there. And they used to go out. The regiment used to go out protecting the border from insurgents from China.
That never ever came.
Oh, they were there every night.
Were they?
Oh yeah, thousands of them.
No, I remember speaking to somebody.
Oh, they used to arrest all of them, loads of them. They were always hopping the border.
I think it was probably closer towards the end.
Yeah. But they were always hopping the border then, because you got to think Mao Zedong was in his element then.
Yeah.
You know, it was still in the Cultural Revolution.
Revolution, yeah.
Yeah, then. So there's loads of Chinese trying to skip the border, and they used to come over, and they used to arrest them sometimes. And they told me some good stories about that, because you've got to know the squaddies quite well, because the young squaddies are the same age as us, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 3 or 4 years older, some of them. You know, and
there's not much difference now.
No,
they've got a lot in common.
We're 15.
Yeah.
They're 17, 18.
Yeah.
You know, there's not much in it. So we get to know the squaddies quite well, and I got loads of friends I had at that time in the Welsh Fusiliers. And well, I've got to say this: we were the only family that I knew that left Hong Kong the way we did.
Right. Sounds ominous.
Yeah. Well, everybody went to Hong Kong. They earned loads and loads of money.
Yeah.
And what they did, they went back. They bought houses in England. One guy and his family, Mansell, his name was. The lad's name was Mansell. Once again, I don't know his first name. Kurt. I do know his first name. Kurt Mansell. They went on the ship from Canberra from Hong Kong to Australia, and emigrated after his career finished to Australia, and went on the Canberra to Australia from there. And most people that left Hong Kong left for loads of money. My parents left for loads of debt.
Right. Not everyone's perfect, are they?
You know, 3.5 years in Hong Kong, and you don't even have enough money to use the exchange rate to change your money to pounds.
Wow.
You don't have that money. My last couple of months, last couple of weeks really, I wasn't allowed to tell anybody we were leaving.
Right.
So, and all the friends used to get together, and everybody used to have a bit of a party when somebody was leaving and stuff like that. I couldn't do that. Wasn't really allowed to, because
it's under a cloud.
The debtors would get hold of them.
Right. So you're not just shops around that, but other people within a regiment, you know?
No, they're not that kind of people. No, Chinese.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. You probably didn't want them to know.
No. The Chinese are not in the army, because the army looks after itself.
Yeah.
You can't get debt in the army, because the OC will get in charge of it and you'll be in trouble. But you can have debt outside.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had the kids things dead quiet, and actually we went to Kai Tak Airport to leave. All they had, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was something like £11.
Wow.
So they got me to change it for them because it looked like pocket money. And don't forget, they're going all the way to England. And once again, we're going back to Corsham.
Right. Well, you were a bit older this time.
Yes, much older. Because I was 15.
Yeah.
Going back to Corsham. Anyway, changed the money, and he had a travel warrant to Chippenham, and we had to walk from Chippenham to Corsham because he didn't have any money left.
That's quite a distance.
4 children there.
Yeah.
The littlest one was 2 years old.
Christ.
And it's about Chippenham to Corsham, 9, 10 mile maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. 2 o'clock in the morning, I had to walk.
Right, so you were back at Corsham then?
Yeah, went back to Corsham, yeah. And once I got there, now I understood what was going on,
Yeah.
what was happening, who was there, why they were there, and why they were behaving like they did when the cat's away.
Yeah.
You know, and once again, I've got to say that military wives are not always the best.
Yeah.
They do not always have the best morals. And I was a 15-year-old boy in a lollipop shop. All these ladies there, and all the husbands were away. All the daughters were there as well, senior ranks daughters and whatever, you know. And it was a really good time. But I was 15 then.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going back to school. And I got a job in Westmoreland's rubber factory, which was just down the road from the Corsham. I could walk there.
Yeah.
It's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. So I had loads of money.
Yeah.
Loads of loose women, and loads of loose girls. So it was okay.
Yeah, I think you enjoyed that place then.
It was okay, yeah. And we were there for a number of months, and I decided to join the army.
Right. Why?
Why? I couldn't really see an end to this.
Because just constant moving around and...
Yeah. And I thought it's what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It was what I used to, what I wanted, what I want to do. So I decided to go to Bath.
Right.
To speak to the army people in Bath. That was the nearest one
Yeah.
to where we were. Oh, actually, Chippenham, Corsham had a nuclear bunker there. Did you know that? Secret bunker.
Somewhere in the back of my head, I do know that. Yeah.
Secret bunker.
Yeah.
Anyway, under there because I've been in it. I went to Bath to sign on, and I was speaking to the recruiting sergeant or whatever it was then, and he says, "Which regiment do you want to join then?" Well, didn't I just come from the Welsh Fusiliers?
So yeah, if you were going
I didn't know any other regiments.
Yeah. Plus you knew people in it, so...
Yeah. I said, I'll go to the Welsh Fusiliers, junior leaders. Because I was only 15.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, well, we can arrange that. So I went back to Corsham, to the hostel there, and I waited for a intake kind of thing, you know. And went to, and that's where they had the intake, was at that camp, which with the hidden stuff underneath.
Yeah.
Which I got to see some of it, you know. And that's where they had like a training session for kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was only about 8 or 10 of us or something like that. And I got sent to Folkestone. You know.
Right. Okay.
My father went up. He got another posting to Bicester.
Yeah.
Actually, I went to Bicester for a very short time before I went to join the leader for the junior leaders. So I went to Bicester for a short time, and while I was there, travel warrants come through and stuff like that, you know, and off I went to sunny Folkestone.
And what did you think of it?
It's a shell.
Ah.
But it was okay to start with. And some interesting stuff that happened, you know. A lot of bullying.
Yeah, that's a theme that's been mentioned a few times, especially
A lot of bullying.
with the older guys I've spoken to.
But I was a bit of a thug.
Yeah, well, you've been trained.
I never a bully.
You were trained in Hong Kong to be a thug.
I never bullied myself.
Yeah.
That's not what I do. I never have done it, you know. And I'd been in there. How long had I been there? About 8 or 9 months. And I had a terrible time. When there was one lad that joined the Gloucesters, and if I got him now, I would still rip his head off now. But he had a couple of buddies.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just me against him. No. And give me a hard time. For months and months and months on end. He used to steal my kit and stuff like that, you know, and he used to slap you around when you weren't looking, only when his friend had his friend with him. Wouldn't slap us around when he's on his own.
Yeah.
No. And he was in the Gloucesters. I suppose I could find him. If I really wanted to.
There'll be a group on Facebook somewhere.
Yeah. I suppose it
So
was
Folkestone junior leaders, was that the infantry junior leaders?
infantry, yeah.
Just lots and lots of.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah,
had the Scottish group, and you had the things like the Welsh Fusiliers were in with the likes of the Gloucesters and Sherwood Foresters and stuff like that. And there was only a couple of each regiment in
yeah.
junior leaders, you know.
Because I mean, I did junior leaders in Royal Artillery, so I imagine. I mean, I joined 86. Sorry, 85. I joined,
Oh,
so it'd have been very different to what you'd experienced all the years before.
oh.
Yeah,
But generally the army was all right.
yeah.
That was all right, you know.
So how long were you there for?
A year, I only did a year. Should have done 3,
Right,
and I just had enough after a year, so I can't take the shy anymore. Because this kid and his friends were on my back the whole time.
right. Okay.
I mean, all the time.
Yeah,
You know, you couldn't sleep at night time. They'd come in and attack you and stuff like that. You know, it was pretty gruesome.
and if you'd have told anyone, they wouldn't have took any notice, probably.
Who? You didn't tell.
Yeah,
They were frightened of him anyway.
right. For the hell.
Yeah. 2 lads that I was with. Mullins, his name was. Mullins.
So we're looking him up on Facebook. Anyone
Well,
knows him?
from the Gloucesters. He'd be the same age as me now. Anyway, I've never forgetting the guy. I've forgotten his henchman,
Yeah,
because he was a leader. He wasn't a very big fellow. He was the same height as me, same size as me. But his henchmen were big kids,
yeah.
you know, and he was cleverer. They were just thick. And anyway, I'd gone about a year there, and it was all right. It was all right. It was hard work.
Yeah.
Especially I smoked like a trooper then. You weren't allowed to smoke in the army when you were 15.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let it.
Yeah, when you were 16.
Well, I was 15.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't 16. And then anyway, you weren't allowed to smoke in there, so that was a hassle as well. But never mind. And I remember one exercise we did up in Otterburn, of all places.
That's a hell of a trip.
From Folkestone to Otterburn. We went by train the whole way by train. I think it took about a week or so. It seemed to be on a train for hours and hours and hours. That was an interesting thing, you know. And we did things in Otterburn that wouldn't be allowed for grown-ups nowadays, and we were just 15. I remember once we had to cross this lake in Otterburn, January, frozen solid.
Yeah.
This lake, but not the middle, just the outside, because Britain doesn't get that cold. And we marched up there, jogged up there in shorts and t-shirts, you know, the old white t-shirt,
white
the red
tee,
t-shirt, you know, and we got to the edge of this lake, and we had to swim across it in January. Stripped down to nothing, diving, off you go to the other side. And I still remember to this day, there's this couple of fly boys there, you know. I cannot swim, but obviously I come from Hong Kong. I swam like a fish, you know. In fact, I dived in, I come out the other side still dry. It was like a bullet through the water. It was so cold. Anyway, these 3 or 4 kids said, I can't swim, Corporal. Can't swim. Okay, it's not a bother. Just stand over there, lads. And everybody's going across, you know, and they're timing them and stuff like that, you know. And then they said, okay, then everybody comes back round, puts their stuff back on, shivering like leaves in the middle of the wind, you know, and it says, okay, in you get. And they took the time with the slowest one, and they had to stand in the water up to there. The time took.
That's a fair thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could all swim.
Yeah. Well, I like that. I like that. That's good.
That's what they did.
Yeah, I like
Anyway, they stood at the neck of the water, you know, but junior leaders was okay. If it hadn't been for that bad element that was in it.
Yeah.
And that had nothing to do with junior leaders in general.
Yeah.
You know, but and I suppose in a way I don't really blame the bully kids there, because I was a know-it-all.
Right.
Father had been in the army. I spent my whole life in the army. I knew everything about the army. They couldn't really teach us anything, which is true.
Yeah.
Which actually made me a bad soldier. Because
I can understand.
I understood by going to a place like junior leaders, basic training and stuff like that, that it's all a process.
Yeah.
You know, and I could just switch off for it and take no notice of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose I can understand some of the reasons why they bullied us, but I'm a fairly easygoing type of person. I was then as well, but they made my life hell. These couple of kids. Anyway, What was I going to say there?
So you did a year there.
Did a year there. Come out. Went back to Bicester because the father was still there, stationed in Bicester,
Yeah.
and the stores depot in Bicester,
Yeah.
massive stores,
Oh,
enormous.
it's huge, yeah.
Okay, I got a job there
Okay.
in Bicester, so I worked as a civvy in Bicester,
Yeah.
and I worked in tentage, which is a great job, rolling marquees up all day long, and it's great.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, and I was that one. And how long did I live there for? How long was I doing it? Not long. My father decided to go and got another. His last posting was to Worcester.
Yeah.
I think an engineer at a regiment in Worcester. He was posted as a fatso sergeant.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard that
No.
term. It's a fatso storeman and stuff like that. Where they have their own stores and the order just for the regiment.
Yeah.
Technical stores.
Yeah, tech stores, yeah.
Tech stores. Fatso sergeant. Then, and he moved up there, and the people in Bicester actually asked me to stay.
Right.
They offered me a bunk with the squaddies and carry on working there for free. For free in the stores.
Were you tempted?
Eh? Very much. Yeah. I was really tempted because obviously by that time I got a few friends with the squaddies and stuff like that, and it was all right to work there. It was a nice place to work, and Pioneer Corps are really thick, aren't they?
Yeah.
I had a few friends in the Pioneer Corps. They're good lads, but they're not bright. Generally, individually probably are, but generally they weren't bright.
Yeah.
And but they offered me to stay there, job as a junior storeman, and carry on working and live in the barracks.
Yeah. I bet you wish you had. Well, yeah.
I don't know. You don't know how things change, do you?
No.
Anyway, I went up to Worcester and I jobbed around. Literally jobbed around. I worked in a hotel for a while. I met the cast from Crossroads.
Right, okay.
Because I worked in a place called the Chateau Impney.
Yeah.
Which they called the Droit, which I think it was called in the program.
I think so, yeah. I don't
the
really
same hotel,
it.
But I met Meg Ryan and all them people.
Right.
I carried the bags for them and stuff like that, But I lived in caravans on site there.
Yeah.
And, jobbed around. Worked in the quality cleaners, the laundry cleaners. Worked there as well. And at the end, I worked in a place called Windshields of Worcester.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the name.
No.
Do you know what a Mini is and the 1100?
Yeah.
Austins?
Yeah.
Subframes?
Yeah.
I used to weld them.
Oh, right. Fair enough.
And his father got took his redundancy. He'd done 21 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
He didn't do the 22.
Ah.
Do you know why?
Dead again.
Dead. He's a guy that would rent his shoes.
Yeah. Right.
And he
So he took the redundancy to get a lump sum.
Yeah, to pay off his debt.
Yeah.
And moved up to Newcastle. And at first it was all right.
Mm-hmm.
It was all right. Council house in Newcastle, and which seemed to go really well for a while. And my father couldn't get used to living in Civvy Street.
Yeah.
If you didn't do something in the army, there was a consequence straight away.
Yeah.
All the time. And he never made that transition from soldier to civvy. Lots of soldiers can't do that.
Yeah.
And he had loads of jobs. I mean, I'm doing the shittiest jobs you can think of,
Yeah.
I'm just the dirt under people's feet, basically. And he's got these really good jobs because he's got on the strength of the army and stuff like that, the customs and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Customs officer and stuff like that. But he only lasted for a couple of months, and he would just bit short this week, so I'll just hand me notice and get me week in hand. Everybody worked a week in hand in them days. And he would actually pack in a job to get his week in hand money.
Oh, Christ.
And then I started working in Roundtrees. You know where Roundtrees?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called now. It's not Roundtrees
no
anymore.
idea.
Anyway, I started working in Roundtrees and earning reasonably good money. And my father was working there as well.
Right.
You know, he'd had all the good jobs. Now he had a shit job, just like me. Anyway, but what it was, I found that I was keeping the family.
Yeah. You would bring the money in.
Yeah, I was bringing the money in, and the parents would drink all their money, and I was giving the kids money so they can pay the dinner money and stuff like that. And I had no money, none at all, very little life, and I kind of give up and said, bollocks to this, I'll go and sign on.
Yeah.
I'll go and sign on the army, and went down to Ridley Place.
Yeah.
Told him, and they said, "Oh, you'd have to keep your old number."
Right.
From the
Yeah.
junior leaders. I didn't know that, but you had to keep your old number. So I have a 71 number, but I didn't join 75.
Yeah.
Bit odd, isn't it? But it's true.
That'd have been a bit confusing for people.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but as far as I could, I actually, when I was in junior leaders, you know, I got issued BDs, battle dress.
Yeah.
The old.
Oh yeah.
Second World War battle dress, gaiters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, I forgot to say that. You know, and a great coat, and a great coat as well.
Wow.
In 1971, still issued. Never used them, but got issued them.
Yeah.
Anyway, going down to Ridley Place, I went to sign on. I remember saying this, I had to do the test. Remember the test?
Yeah, the old Bob test.
Yeah, and he says, "Oh, what do you want to do, lad?" I was 19 then. And I said, "I want to go in the RAOC."
Right. And again, that's all you knew.
No.
Yeah.
But I knew what they did.
Yeah.
Very little, generally. And don't forget, I was in the infantry before, walked everywhere and dug holes.
Yeah.
You know, that's all the infantry do, basically. And he says, why do you want to do that for? You can do you know, you've got a score that you can go and join them or join these or join them. Why do you want to go to the RAOC? And what do you want to be? I said, I want to be a storeman. Why do you want to be a storeman? You know, I said, because I do. My thinking was, I'll get sent to something like Bicester.
Yeah.
Where I've got experience to, or Donington, or something like that. Where you're just a civvy with a green suit on.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you have to do your odd exercise, your duties and stuff like that. Basically, it'll be a civvy because I wasn't enamoured from the army life, really. You know, and I didn't want to join anything else where the army comes into it.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't be bothered with that shit. Anyway, and eventually they said, okay, then you can go in the RAOC. So I went to Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah.
Where they have the training centre there in Sutton Coldfield. And they tried to persuade me to go and join somebody else, but I didn't. I stuck with the RAOC. And I got sent eventually to Blackdown Barracks. Yeah, it was Blackdown Barracks. No, just outside Perm, right?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I got sent there, and I had a great time.
So training was a bit different there than what was a junior leaders then?
No, it wasn't different.
No.
It was exactly the same training.
Yeah.
It's just that I'd done it all, so it was easy.
Yeah, fair enough.
It was a doddle, and it wasn't infantry training.
No.
It was RAOC training,
Okay.
which is not exactly hard.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's harder for a civvy coming straight out of civvy street. It's pretty hard.
Yeah.
But not. I'd spent a year in junior leaders. You know.
So you knew already how to bully boots.
Yeah, I knew all that sort of crap.
Yeah.
You know, and actually the corporals and sergeants kind of left me alone. In fact, I used to go drinking with some of them. You know, and I didn't do a lot of the stuff the other kids did.
Right.
I remember, you know what change parade is, don't you?
Yeah.
Army do it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been to many change parades in my time. and I remember you get downstairs and everybody gets in there, they shout NBC suit, and everybody rushes up, cheers everybody. Well, I was sat at the end of my bed in working dress. Are you not coming up? No. You know, and somebody says, well, why did you do that? He says, I said to him, do you think they've got time to count you when you get down?
Fair enough. Why didn't I think of that?
I only went down when they actually shouted what I was wearing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I didn't bother. So I never had a hard time in basic training. Was good.
You knew how to play the system a bit better. You knew how to play the system.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It made life very easy for me. And I thought, great. Did my trade training afterwards. Became a qualified storeman. Load of bollocks. And got me first posted. And it was
Go on.
COD Chilwell. I thought, great. Hey, we've made it.
Yeah.
I've got exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Exactly what I want. So then I rolled down to COD Chilwell. And they put me in the quick reaction force. So I walked everywhere and dug holes.
Yeah. So you never quite got what you wanted to start with then?
No. So I didn't get what I wanted. Although I did do some helicopter training, which was quite interesting. I never liked flying again. It was pretty dramatic, that was. A lot of injuries in helicopter training. Jesus, was it not?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They went to Salisbury Plain. What's Salisbury Plain got on it?
Not a lot apart from
Bugger
chalk and guns.
Bugger all.
Yeah.
Imagine leaping out of a helicopter at night.
Yeah.
You can't see the ground.
No.
It's not healthy.
Some ankles get snapped there.
Oh, yeah. People land on top of people and stuff like that. One lad, we did a jungle drop, which when they put the rope down into the trees. Did the jungle drop, and with all your kit on, obviously. And down we went, and this lad didn't have a proper hold anyway. Zoop, straight to the bottom. Opened his hands out, and it just went fountains of blood.
Yeah.
They ripped all the hands up.
Yeah.
Oh, with some nasty stuff. People really got hurt on it. And we were up a height, and back to back. What were these Sea Kings or something? Were they? Must have been, because the seats were back to back like that, and they had doors both sides. Yeah. Doors are open, and you go up with a helicopter, and you're strapped in. You've got all your gear, and you've got your full pack on, and all the rest of it. Guns and what have you. And why they give me a gun, I have no idea. Anyway, you go up there, and the helicopter flies. You've been in a helicopter?
Yeah.
Flies like that, and all you can see there's the ground.
Yeah.
And all you can see there's the sky.
Yeah.
And you're flying around like that, And they tell you before you go on, the green light comes on, you hit your belt, opens your belt, and out you go. And they hover. Well, the helicopter was like that. Green belt comes on. I hit the belt. I'm first, right in front. Keen I was. Right in the front. So I hit the belt comes off. And if it hadn't been for the sergeant's foot holding me into the thing, I'd have gone out, because we were about 1,000 foot out. It was just a trial. See if the lights would work. And then it turned round, and I was literally on the chair falling out of the helicopter. The sergeant had seen that, put his foot on us and held us in.
Wow.
Till we got to the bottom. So I'd never liked flying since then.
No, that's enough to put you off, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, that was quite interesting. And the ladies in Nottingham are very nice as well. There's a common theme.
Yeah. Hey, young squaddy.
Yeah, two dicks. Anyway, it was an interesting time. And learned lots of things in Chilwell, actually. That's where I re-met Q Campbell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you said from earlier,
yeah. Yeah, the guy that put the flag down.
Yeah.
He comes from, used to come, well, he's probably dead now. He used to come from up here, and he gave me a lift home one day. And for the weekend, come to see your parents. And he told me all about Gurkhas and Singapore and stuff like that. Nice guy, very nice guy.
Yeah.
Not a very good driver. In fact, he was a lousy driver. He says to us he had to take his test in Kenya because he kept failing in Britain. That was his claim to fame.
Instant pass, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he got it in Kenya easy enough. Anyway, he gives a lift home, and that's what he told us about, taking the flag down and stuff like that.
Wow. So where did you go after Chilwell then?
Chilwell. We went to, I then got a posting to 9-4 Locating Regiment.
Oh, yeah. Larkhill. Well, there would have been Larkhill then, would there? Cellar, yeah.
What's that next to?
Trenchard. Join, yeah. Very well with Troy, yeah. You've got a full circle.
And I got posted there, and I thought, oh, great, great. Store section,
Yeah.
stores platoon, the
Yeah.
only platoon we had in stores. All the rest were sections or bigger.
Yeah.
A platoon. This was a platoon, and I got posted there, and I thought it'd be great. But what's right close to Silla?
Go on.
The bloody border, isn't it?
Hmm.
Or it was there. So it
It
was.
wasn't that far. No, yeah.
Yeah, it was always active edge. In fact, I spent some
Active
time on the
edge.
wire,
Yeah.
covering from the 21st Lancers.
Them words, active edge. Ugh.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I got posted
Brings back
there.
memories.
Got posted there, and it's an artillery regiment.
Yeah.
And artillery are very strange people.
Excuse me.
If it doesn't move, they polish it.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And they can't polish it; they'll paint it.
I was-
Now, don't forget, I've been with the infantry.
Yeah.
I've been with the RAOC. I've been on the active duty with the RAOC because quick reaction is active duty the whole
Yeah.
time, and so I do know how to do things.
Yeah.
When I got there, it's a different world. All these silly people doing strange things, and why they were doing it, I've no idea.
Boredom.
Anyway, I was in jail 3 times in the first 6 weeks. Only for weekends,
Yeah.
for doing things that I shouldn't be doing, like not bothering to turn up and stuff,
Shit happens. We've all done it.
Duty storming. Where's the duty? I have no idea. It's gone down. Anyway, it's true that girls like foreigners. And I landed in Germany, and what I said before about squaddies having 2 dicks, I really had 2 then. I remember going downtown one night. This is true as I'm sat here, and you certainly get into some scrapes of some really ugly people.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up, and I'm not very pretty myself, but I remember waking up in this house. It's flat. And I looked over, and there's this monster next to me, with hair on the teeth and stuff like that, and she's so minging, it's unbelievable. And I'm trying to sneak out, 6 o'clock in the morning, I didn't remember her. 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, sneaking out, and I couldn't speak a word of German, and she couldn't speak any English, which is probably helpful. I'm sneaking out, she wakes up. And I said, I've got to go, I've got to go. And she said, no, no, no. And she's telling me not to go, stuff like that, And I'm thinking, oh, I've got to get out of here. And I eventually get out of this flat. And I walk downstairs, and there's a taxi rank at the front there. And I jump in a taxi, and Heidekaserne, there was a camp I went to.
Yeah.
And I've learned that from German. All it means is a camp in the woods. Heidekaserne. Heide is the woods.
Yeah.
And I jump in, this taxi driver starts laughing. And I'm thinking to myself, cheeky bastard knows where I've been. He's taking the mickey out of us here. Anyway, he's right, goes to the end of the block, turns right, and there's a camp. And the lass upstairs is only trying to tell us you don't have to get a taxi. The camp's just over there. Anyway, I met my first wife there.
Right.
In Germany. And I also did 4 weeks of Jankers after that, actually. Because I met the wife, and I was late for exercise.
Fair enough.
And anyway, I said to her, I've got to go now. And she says, what's that? And I said, well, it's a long weekend, extended weekend. I think I was on duty. But anyway, I wasn't on duty. And what they used to do is line the trucks up on the square.
Yeah.
Before you go on an exercise. I'd only been in Germany 6 weeks or something. Nothing but trouble the whole time. Most of it my own fault. And anyway, I think we were moving out at 8 o'clock, and it was about 10 o'clock already. Well, there you go. I'll just go and report in and take the wrath of whoever's there. So I'm walking up, it don't take me time sauntering in, and the trucks are still out there. They're all out there, all lined up. And I'm 3 hours late.
Waiting for you.
The bastards waited for me. Sergeant Gannon, who was in charge of our section, had told lies to cover for me.
Right.
I didn't know this, did I? And what he said, whatever lies he'd made up. Anyway, I've come along. I walked in, and he grabs us, the sergeant, this big guy, grabs us, and he's slapping us all over, telling you, kids in the back of the truck, get in there, you idle shit, and the kind of things that sergeants do. And I hear across the parade square, and it's the RSM from the artillery there, screaming, Sergeant Gannon, please do your dirty washing in your own time. So I spent the whole 4 weeks on kitchen duty.
Yeah, hey, it's understandable.
But I was there for a couple of years, and that was the end of my army career.
Right. So you didn't want
I
to
was only in the regs 5 years, maybe 4.5
Yeah.
years, 5 years, something like that. And I discharged in Germany.
Did you stay in Germany?
Just a minute. I discharged in Germany, and it didn't work out.
Right.
So I went back to England. I was back in England with my German wife then.
Right.
I was the only squaddy that I know of that ever got a quarter who's single.
Right.
I had a quarter, and I wasn't married.
Right.
Doesn't really work, does it?
Yeah.
In the army, but I had one.
Yeah.
Before we married. But anyway, come back to England, and I worked in England for a couple of years. My first son was born and stuff like that, and it was the Thatcher time.
Right. So
industry just collapsed.
Especially up here.
Yeah. North East, terrible. And what was it? Last one in, first one out.
Yeah.
So I went from one. I literally walked out of the army, and I could have had a pick of jobs. I mean, dozens of them.
Yeah.
And within 2 years, 3 years, there wasn't a job to get. I couldn't even get a job as a boatman. There was no jobs, nothing. So last one in, first one out. Yeah. Sack. In 2 years, I'd lost. No, 3 years I was, because the last job was Winthrops. So I was there for 2 years, and Winthrops turned around and said, "We're making we're Winthrops, it's Sterling Health, and we're making, I think, 11 of us were made redundant, but it only had a workforce of something like 40 men. All the rest were women.
Right.
The factory was mostly women, and they gave me, I think it was £400, £500, something like that, as redundant, because I haven't been there very long.
Yeah.
And I bought an old post office van that they were selling off, at the end of the year. Yellow van, post office, comma van, it was.
Yeah.
Comma.
Yeah.
The old comma van.
Yeah.
And we put whatever I had in the back, and we drove back to Germany.
Don't blame you. Did you run a Wiedersehen pet then?
I was the Wiedersehen pet, yeah. And lived in Germany then for 12 years.
So what brought you back to the UK then?
The wall came down.
And Germany changed overnight.
Well, a lot of it did change, yeah. And German people are not very nice people collectively. Individually, they're fine. Collectively, the Germans are shits.
Yeah, I mean, the Germans, we left Germany 1990-ish.
That's when I left.
Yeah. And when the wall came down, the people we knew, like a lot of Germans that we knew who we were friends with and stuff like that, they just weren't looking forward to it. They said, we're going to have no money.
No.
There's going to be no jobs.
Loads of tax.
Yeah. We're going to have to pay for them lot.
And Germany's a funny place. Germans are funny people because everybody's a foreigner. Everybody's a second-class citizen, except for Germans. In fact, while we were in Germany, I'd been there for a while because it takes a while to speak German and understand what's going on, because I didn't speak before.
Yeah.
And they had things like Ausländerkonto. You know what Ausländerkonto?
No.
Konto is a bank account.
Yeah.
And foreigner bank account?
Yeah.
Could you imagine going to Barclays here and you having a foreigner's bank account because you come from France or whatever?
Yeah.
Second class citizen?
No, I get it, yeah.
Yeah. And I went to Went to a Dole where I was looking for a job or something like that. No, I was in between jobs actually, and they had proper um, thing with A to Z, alphabetical order and all the people in there, and down the bottom they had all the registered foreigners.
Right. Okay.
Went to the Arbeitsamt when I first got there, looking for work, and the official there turned around and said, "Why don't you go to VW?" Oh, they're not taking any foreigners on now. And used to see outside at the factories in them days when I first went there. I don't know if they still do it. Probably not. Used to see it outside. Wir stellen an.
Yeah.
We're starting electricians, plumbers, whatever.
Yeah.
And no Auslanders need apply.
Couldn't get away with it now.
That's used to see that in the streets.
Yeah.
You know that Germany is mostly rented accommodation.
Yeah.
Very few people own their own houses in Germany. Very rare.
It's normally like 100-year mortgage and stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. I'll tell you the reason in a minute. But most of it's rented accommodation, and you'd go to what's called an immobilia.
Yeah.
It's where you rent places. It's also to buy as well, but mostly rented. And they'll actually have on the no foreigners need to apply.
So you're kind of stumped.
Aren't you?
Yeah.
Aren't you? Isn't it difficult? Anyway, you kind of get past that, but you're always second class in Germany when you work. And I was a foreman when I finished, and that's very rare for a foreigner to be a foreman because I was in charge of Germans. I used to get like Heinrich, the truck driver, would come in and say, "Oh, under Hitler we would never have this sort of stuff, and it would never happen under Hitler. All these bloody foreigners in here and stuff like that." And I would say things like, "Oh, well, you didn't have unemployment under Hitler, did you? You burnt the buggers."
Yeah. Bloody hell.
But I spoke German then.
Yeah.
And I spoke German like a German, and I looked like a German, especially in them days. Oh, my legs gone cramp. Which is interesting, as you can imagine. But the war came down, and my wife then, my German wife, because it was German, my wife, she liked the sauce a bit. She was a bit of a drinker.
Right.
And was becoming problematic. Yeah, she was always drunk. She's always pissed. And it's stopped. Well, it's probably my fault to start with. But she was always a substance user anyway.
Yeah.
Of one form. She was an addictive personality, which I learned later on in life, what that is. But I didn't know at the time. But anyway, the wall came down, and I remember looking at the pictures of the crack in the wall, and I said, "Well, that's it. I'm leaving." And she said, I remember her saying to us, "I don't want to go." I said, "I'm not sure I asked you." Because I was going, whether she came or not. It's the end of it. Because the Germans collectively are horrible people. I once, a good friend of mine, a German lad, and as we were talking about the war and the Holocaust and stuff like that, and I said, "Oh, it can never happen again." He says, "Don't you believe it? It's German, this. Don't you believe it?" I said, "We could do it all again. We are of that mentality.
Yeah.
We like to be in charge. And if being in charge means somebody else is going to suffer, it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you 2 stories about the way the Germans think. The first one is, I was working in this firm called, 3 stories, Schausluck. And it was working for the car industry. We used to make the insides of cars and stuff like that. Never buy a VW. Anyway, we used to make the insides of cars, with carpets and the front grills and stuff like that. And had this guy, because I used to drive a forklift there, and also unknown for a foreigner to be driving anything other than sweeping the road and doing the dirty jobs. I used to drive a forklift. Anyway, I got my job there because of the Second World War. I learned 3 words when I first got to Germany. Haben Sie Arbeit hier?
I was going to work here. Yeah.
3 words I learned. And I walked to the front, and there was the classical German guy with the cap on and the little suit at the front of the gate, big factory behind him, and a little gate in there. And I walked up to him and I said, "Haben Sie Arbeit hier?" I'm a moment. I didn't know what he was saying. I knew that bit. I'm a moment. Anyway, he picked up the phone and started waffling away. And obviously later on I realised what he said. He'd rung what they call the loan bureau, which is where they start people on.
Yeah.
And he says, "Just go along there to that flat roof thing," and he was pointing, so I knew what he meant. So I just walked along there, knocked on the door. The young lady opened it and said, "Haben Sie Arbeit hier?" And then she blah blah blah. "Haben Sie Arbeit hier?" Because I didn't know any other words.
Yeah.
I said, "I'm beer" and stuff like that. And I said, "Sind Sie Deutsch?" "No, I'm English." "Oh, ein Moment." Anyway, she took us in, sat us in a room, and then I heard a waffle in the back room. Wahlberg was the name. And what happened was, Wahlberg, Herr Wahlberg, was a Meister. He spoke English.
Right.
So they called him in. As it happens, Wahlberg was in the Panzers. And he didn't have a Panzer because they run out of them towards the end of the war. And he was running away from the Russians and got caught just outside Bergen-Belsen, heading towards Celle.
Yeah.
And because he was SS,
right,
they thought that he was part of that, but he wasn't. He was a Panzer.
Panzergrenadier. Yeah.
Yep, and he come there with all the black uniforms on and stuff like that. And the Scottish corporal made his life hell because they kept him really bad. You know, he beat him up every day and stuff like that. You know, just for fun. And he's telling me all this, Wahlberg, and he says he'd been there about 2 or 3 weeks or so, and then the Red Cross. The information come through from the Red Cross at the time, and it told him that he wasn't an SS guard and he had nothing to do with Bergen-Belsen and nothing like that. He was actually Gefreiter in the Wehrmacht.
Yeah.
And this Scottish soldier felt so guilty, Scottish corporal actually, felt so guilty about it that he arranged for Wahlberg to get a job. And he got him a job as carting rations around for the army. What job could you get that would be better than after the war to be carting rations around? You know, so he managed to feed all his family and stuff like that. He was beholden to the Brits because of the way they treated him, and therefore I got a job. Through Wahlberg, through the Second World War.
Wow.
Yeah, and anyway, and the next one was I've been there for a while, a forklift driver, and another forklift driver called Rocker. It's called Rocker because he had a motorbike.
Right.
That's the only reason. Anyway, nice enough guy. Got to know him really well, and he decided to be friends with me.
Yeah.
He used to visit his family and stuff like that. He used to come to ours. He used to go to his. And his second name was Brandes. I didn't know this at the time, but Brandes was the farmer in the area, and the Germans in the countryside still worked on the old system. Farmer owns everything. Everybody works for the farmer.
Yeah.
A bit like us in the 18th century or whatever.
You know, and almost feudal system.
Yeah. It still was. I met some what they called Leibeigener, which is a serf.
Yeah.
German word for serf, and they were actually serfs.
Wow.
I've met 2 of them, Heinrich and Bruno. They were serfs. Anyway, I'll tell that story later. But anyway, got to know him quite well, really friendly and stuff like that. And he asked me to come to one of his meetings in the village. I lived in Vardeling. He lived in Nienhagen, in the village, Nienhagen. Yeah. And he says, "Come along there at night time." And I got there, and everybody's wearing SS uniforms and flags all over the place.
Bloody hell.
Because I'm pretty straightforward, and my German wasn't very good. I'd call a darkie and stuff like that, you know, but it doesn't mean to say that I'm racist at all, because I'm not.
Right.
You know, but that's the way I used to talk. I still do nowadays, sometimes. But I used to all the time then, and he thought I was a sympathizer.
Wow. So underground Nazis.
Yeah. And apparently, in just about every bloody village in Germany, it's like that. Once you get out of the city, it's all over the place. Right wing Germans, all over the place. Thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them.
Just waiting.
They're all there. They're all there. A story that's got nothing to do with me was a young girl in southern Germany somewhere was doing a school project, and she's just a German girl
Yeah.
doing a school, and she decided to do a project on her own village, and she found out that all the people that were now in charge were also in charge during the Nazi period,
Right.
because the Americans didn't change
No.
the system. Neither did the Brits.
No, they didn't want to.
They
No.
just swapped one.
I've read about that where
They're all sympathisers.
yeah, keep them in charge because it keeps the order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Germans love order.
Yeah.
And later on, I just walked out. I couldn't be having that. And we were not friends anymore. We still said hello in the street, but the families didn't mix or anything like that, because I have nothing to do with that sort of shit.
Yeah.
And I never would. But anyway, later on, I met a friend called a Jugendbetriebsrats Vorgenehmter, which means he represented the youth in the factory. Because it's a Betriebsrat. He was a youth organizer. And I said to him, because at least a third, probably near on a half, of the people that worked in this giant factory were Turks or Greeks.
Yeah.
At least. And I said to him, you know what's really funny? Because it was the biggest employer of apprentice in the area. I mean, big. Would set on 200 a year. That's a lot of apprentices.
Yeah.
And I said, it's really funny that I don't see any of the kids from. I know that the Turkish people can't do that because the German was terrible, but the kids would because they go to German schools and they would be able to. And he says, no, not here. He says, no, won't work here. I said, how's that then? He said, when it comes in, they apply, just like all the German kids do, and you don't need to be a Chemie-Facharbeiter. You only need a Durchschnitt, an average of 4, which is not very high. It's a D.
Yeah.
It's not very high, and because that's the lowest training they do is a Chemie-Facharbeiter. And he turned around and said, they'll not make it. That's what they say. He said, but what really happens is, because he was dead against it as well, as a German guy, he was dead against it, and he says, what really happens is, they come in, Muller, yep, Klaus, yep, Ikinchi, bin.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And I said, but that would happen to my kids as well. I had 2 boys in. Because they'd come in with McLean. That'd go in the bin as well, along with the Kinchi. Oh yeah, he says, your kids will not work here as an apprentice. Well, if my kids can't work in here, neither can I, and I've got a different job.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen firsthand. I wouldn't say in fact, it was. It is contempt. While living in Germany, I was driving home, and I drove around a corner, and there was a family getting out of their car. And as I drove around the corner, a kid ran across the road. And I thought, shit, I've hit him. And my wife and kids were in the car as well, so obviously stopped, jumped out the car, no kid to be seen. I thought, where the hell did he go? But I had a Passat, and it was filthy. Yeah. But when I went around the side, to the passenger side, there was almost like a cartoon outline of where the kid had ran into the car. And it was clean. It was almost comical. So I'm looking around, and the only house next to us, I went up to the house, banged on the door. They opened it, and they were Turkish. And I was trying to explain, I said, child running across the road hit the car, and they were just looking at us, shaking their head, and slammed the door on us. I thought, shit. And I know what the mentality of people like that, hit the car, sue him, type of thing. So we drove into camp, went to the RMP station in Horner, and I told them what happened. And they were like, well, what do you want us to do? I said, I'm just reporting it in case anything comes back from the General Civil. She goes, right, well, we'll have to speak to them in the house, but we'll have to get the translator in. So they went out the back, brought a German guy out, explained to him. He just looked at us and goes, "So they were Turkish?" He went, "Yeah." He went, "Oh, fuck them." I turned around and walked off. He goes, "Not interested." And I was just like, that's just not right. And it is contempt for the people who are there. But then I noticed that the Turks started going up in their estimation as the Polish and the Russians were coming in. You know, in the Turks, the Turks were looking down on them. You know what I mean? And then the Germans were like, "Yeah, well, the Turks are all right now because we've got the Polish and the Russians to look after, or to hate." Strong word, but yeah, it was. Yeah, they do. I mean, that was in Bergen, and it's. I mean, you know where the place is. It's out in the sticks almost, and they were great with us, with the Brits and that. I mean, the German silver place.
Oh, the Germans
were
are
great with me.
Germans were with the Brit soldiers. They were great, but if you were a civvy, they wouldn't be.
No.
You're tracked just the same as a Turkish person.
Yeah.
You know, and anyway, I didn't work for them again, and I got a different job. And
there's someone that. I mean.
Anyway, I joined the TA in Germany, which is very rare.
I didn't know they had TA in Germany.
One vehicle platoon in Germany.
As in the British TA?
British TA, yeah.
I didn't know they had that.
Oh, yeah, and they also had signallers, and there was another one as well. I think it was the medics.
Right.
There's three units. One was ordnance, one was signallers, one was a medic, something like that. Anyway. Yeah. And I joined 171 vehicle platoon, and that's when I nearly got called up I did get called up.
Right.
For the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
And what happened was they got a call to come into Recklinghausen. That's where we were based. And I got to the gate of Recklinghausen. Do you know who was on the gate? Bundeswehr. and I pulled up and I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" "Well, you lot all buggered up." He says, "You're all gone to war. You're coming in here, TA coming in here, so we can go back." Bundeswehr was standing guard on British camps, you know. And what really funny story was, as I pulled up to go into this thing, there was a big long line of Land Rovers, loads of them, all on bricks. I mean, I'm not talking 10, I'm talking 50, 60, 70, on bricks. And I said to the guy at the front, I said, why are they all on bricks? He says, "It's typical British," he said. "We're stupid." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, when vehicles go to war, it's got to have two spares.
Mm.
And none of us had spares.
No.
So they cannibalised them all off there. That's why they're waiting for spares to come back from England so they can put tyres back on the Land.
Send them out, yeah. Bloody hell. I didn't even know there was TA.
Yeah. I spent 6 years with them. I joined as I was working for that firm, that I packed in. I had another jobs after that, a couple of jobs after that.
You learn something new every day then.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, I spent 6 years with them, and I moved back to England and rejoined a TA here, 72 Engineer Regiment over in Gateshead.
All right.
And I was with them for another 6 years. So I did 12 years with the TA as well.
And it was that every weekend or?
Well,
or when you could be
fairly regular. I went to almost all the camps and stuff like that,
Get your bonus and that,
To be advanced party a couple of times as well. That was a good one. And Belgium advanced party. Me and a guy from Towlaw. That was good. Anyway, we went. I don't know if you know Belgium at all.
No, I've only driven through it.
Yeah, I met up with a guy from Lunlook as well from Australia.
Yeah,
that was when I was in Germany, but Towlaw was when I was here. He was all right. Terry Kennedy, typical Australian.
Yeah.
4 foot now, 18 stone. Good lad. Anyway, it was W2 as well.
Yeah.
And he knocked around with me, and I was a private. So he went on a lash a bit there.
In Belgium, Belgian beer.
Yeah. That was in Antwerp, that was. But anyway, the Towlaw guy. In Belgium, quite a lot of pubs are just basically your sitting room here.
Yeah.
With a window out to the front and a few chairs and a corner bar. That's a pub. And it looks like a normal house.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get me and this lad from Towlaw. We're in there having a few beers, this little place. And this guy comes in there with no neck. tattoos, no neck.
Yeah.
Comes in. And his mate comes in, he's got even less of a neck. And there's about 3 or 4 of them stood around the bar. And just me and this lad from Tavalore. And they keep looking over us, and looking at us, and they're thinking, oh dear me. Oh dear, here we go. We're in the wrong place at the wrong time, as usual.
Yeah.
And anyway, this one guy comes sauntering, he can hardly walk, he's that big. He comes sauntering over to the table like, you English soldiers. Oh, okay, here we go. And the lad from Tavalore said, yeah. You want to go to the party? So we spent the whole week boozed up with these Belgians. He was paratrooper, Belgian paratrooper.
Right.
And he invited us to a party, so I had a great time. We were expecting to get turned over in there, and we had free beer.
There's a bonus then, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Anyway, cut a long story short, is because there's loads of other stories in there, as you can imagine. It's a long time. Come back to England and couldn't get a job.
Right.
I was what's called a disponent in Germany, which somebody that arranges transport throughout Europe.
Yeah.
You speak to the German transport system and Dutch transport works different to ours.
Yeah.
You know that something like half our trucks on the road are empty, don't you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they are.
But they've got to go there.
You can see when they're empty because the springs are not up down.
Yeah.
But Germany don't. You arrive at a city or a town and you register yourself as free to be loaded.
Yeah.
And then I would ring a centre in, let's say, Hanover or Hamburg or whatever it is, and said I've got a shipment of whatever it is come from there going down to Heilbronn.
Yeah.
And they'll say okay, and they would match you up with a truck.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So almost all the trucks that travel in Germany and Holland and France are full.
Yeah.
There's about
it's a more efficient system.
15% are empty.
Yeah.
Because you can't get loads for all of them. But here, 50% are empty. They drive for Asda and empty when they come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're stupid. Basically, we don't know how to organise a shithouse. That's the British. Anyway, that was my job in Germany.
Yeah.
And to do that job in Germany, you had to speak at least 2 languages.
Right. English and German.
I spoke English and German, smattering of Dutch, a little bit of Danish. I could get by with both languages. And so that was my job over here. Here, when you're in Britain, you don't have to speak anything.
No.
Just English. So what happened here is that it's usually the nephew of whoever's running the firm, he's doing that job. And you can't get that in Germany. You've got to have qualifications. You've got to know your stuff to get that job.
Yeah.
Germans are very efficient with that sort of stuff. And Brits aren't. We're just kind of shit.
Yeah.
We can't run nothing. Anyway, I come back here, come to the job, and I seen the job for a nursing assistant. I could get a job driving a tanker or something like that. 28-ton tanker with diesel in the back for £3 an hour. I'm not doing that. Who's going to do that kind of job for £3 an hour?
Yeah. It's a bit more nowadays, man.
Oh yeah, but it wasn't in them days.
It wasn't then, no.
Because you had thousands of squaddies coming out of the army every year.
Yeah.
And places like Newcastle, where all the squaddies come from, they've all got HG1s.
Yeah.
Or most of them have, anyway. And so I wasn't going to do that kind of job. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of hard work, and it's not an easy job to do. That's why they get well paid now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I seen a nursing assistant, and it was actually more than a driver was getting. As a nursing assistant. I'm sure I could do that. I've never done that before. And that's how it started. I started as a nursing assistant at St. Nick's.
In St. Nick's? Wow. Yeah, so the guy I was on about earlier before we started this, who's doing the degree, he's just left there.
Has he?
Working there. Then he's moved over to Prudhoe.
Yeah.
So that's just... I didn't really know about that place until he's told me a few stories about it. When he's on the... I don't know if I can say where he is. No, I can't. Yeah, because I'm not allowed to. I'll tell you after.
All right.
Because when we spoke about it on his podcast, when we interviewed him, he afterwards he was like, well, I'm supposed to cut that bit out and I'll talk about it. I was like, oh, okay.
Mm. Well, I'm retired and I can.
Yeah, but he's not. So
Anyway, I got a job in elderly.
yeah,
Worked with you. Loved it. You know, I couldn't understand. Nurses were going around, oh, this is such a hard job. And I'm sitting there reading the paper, I'm a fag. And saying, I don't know what they're talking about. They're talking about stress. I have no idea what stress is. You know, this is women, mostly. They talk about the stress of the job. And stuff. I didn't have any stress in it. It's a total. Anyway, and I moved from there into forensics. You know what forensics are?
yeah,
Prisoners. Uh, I walked into my first time in a forensic ward and I was a bit frightened. You know, these are all prisoners and stuff like that. I walked in, crossed the threshold, and a lad come walking towards me, bit like the Belgian guy,
yeah.
muscles all over the place, and he comes walking directly to me. You know, I thought, oh, I've just got here. They're going to kill me already.
Not my first day. Yeah.
He walked right out there. The lad was called Steve Skinner. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind me talking about him. Anyway, he says, I know you from Wolfen. Me and you used to drink in a rugby club. And I said, yeah, Steve. And he was a patient. He had a pair of shorts on and just his muscles hanging out, you know. And that was my introduction to forensics. And then I went and done my training as well at uni.
And how long were you there for?
As a nurse.
Yeah.
27 years.
So you finally settled down into a job.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll end the podcast there. It's been very interesting.
I said it would be a bit different, didn't I?
It is. It has been a bit different. Thanks for sharing your stories. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming to the house and doing it as well. I'll just like to say, anyone who's listening to this, I hope they've enjoyed it and look forward to the next one. If you like this episode, please leave a comment on Spotify or any of the platforms that you listen to this episode on. Please consider buying me a coffee using the link in the show notes or on the Facebook page. It just helps to pay the costs of the hosting and the software used to create the podcasts. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Andrew Smith. Andrew will be going over his time served, time in Bosnia, and later going back to revisit Bosnia to see how it had fared after the UN